If you've been hitting the gym but are still struggling to put on muscle, it might be because you're not following one or all of these things here. So stick around because I'll be sharing with you the framework that I use to put on muscle mass for myself and for my clients. Hey, what's going on, you guys? So I get asked quite often, Alec, what can I do to burn fat, build muscle? I've got a whole playlist on burning fat, but in this video, I want to talk about how you can build some more muscle through what I call muscle mastery. Get it? Muscle mass. Now, typically what I found when it comes to building muscle is that people are not following one of these four things. What are those four things? Well, they're either not targeting the right muscle, they're not doing the right frequency of training the muscle, they're not doing the right amount of intensity, and they're also just not getting the diet locked in. So I'm going to be breaking down each of these four things. That way you can feel like you can master muscle mass. So just to preface, I just want to point out when it comes to gaining muscle, if you've been in the gym for a while, you can expect about 1 pound of muscle growth every month. Now, if you are brand new to a specific routine or you're new to working out in general, you could expect up to 2 pounds of muscle growth every month. And the main reason I wanted to point this out is because let's say you are following this to a T and you find that you're only gaining about like 3, maybe 5 pounds every month. That's not a bad thing. You don't want to be gaining 10, 15, 20 pounds every month, because if you are only realistically gaining 1 or 2 pounds of muscle each month, if you gain 20 pounds, 18 of those pounds is fat. You don't want to be accumulating a lot of fat, because then when you go to do your cut to get ripped for the summer, people do a super drastic cut and they end up losing the majority of the muscle that they spent all that time building. So if you find that like each month you're gaining about like 3, maybe 4 pounds, that's fine, because as long as you're following this, then realistically a good chunk of that weight is going to be muscle mass. So I just want to point that out ahead of time, because if you're following this and it's like, Alec, I'm not gaining 20 pounds. You're not supposed to. Like, that's way too much weight. So if you gain the 3 pounds, it's like you are actually on the right path. So now that I kind of established kind of like the proper expectations here, now I want to go into this framework. So target. More often than not, when I'm working with people and they're training, they simply are just not targeting the right muscles, whether it's through training or just through like body recomposition, meaning, they want to look like they put on a lot of weight, but they're not training the muscles that are going to give them that visual change. Like, I have guys who come up to me and they're like, Alec, I'm trying to put on some more weight. Like, I'm at like 195 pounds right now. And I want to get to like where you're at. I'm like, dude, I'm like 180 pounds wet. So you're already heavier than I am. They're like, what? Why does it look like you have way more muscle? And it's like, it might be more muscle, but also it's because I train specific muscles. You can target specific muscles that give the illusion that you're bigger than you actually are. So shoulders, you hit your shoulders, like lateral raises, it builds out that lateral delt. Not only does it give greater arm definition, but it also broadens your upper body. So it gives that V type of look. When it comes to training your chest, if you target your upper chest, it gives that visual look where it's like, you got your chest muscles kind of poking out of your shirt there. And it as well, develops that V taper shape. And one of the best things that you can do when it comes to building that V taper, getting the broad shoulders, is not just hitting lateral delts, but also hitting the lats in general. So like wide grip lat pull downs. Those are going to be fantastic for building out that like upper body V shape. And the thing that's crazy, going back to this, like let's say you could only build 1 pound of muscle every month. If you're targeting every single muscle in the entire body, that 1 pound has to be dispersed through everything. It's not going to be that noticeable. But if you are building 1 pound of muscle and you only focused on your shoulders, let's say, half a pound here, boom, half a pound here, boom. That alone is going to be such a drastic visual change to your physique that you theoretically don't need to train any other muscle group. It's pretty crazy. But not that I'm saying to do that. What I want to point out is just be like mindful of which muscles you're targeting. So if you needed to visually look like you put on a whole lot of muscle mass in a very short period of time, I would say just spam lateral raises for the shoulders, do incline barbell press, and do wide grip lat pull downs. Now, sure, you can throw in squats with that as well to really get that like kind of testosterone boost there. But ideally, like, you could just do those 3 exercises, spam it, and that's going to be like a cheat code to looking like you're putting on a lot of muscle without necessarily needing to put on like a lot of muscle. So before I move to the next part of frequency, a second tip when it comes to targeting the muscle is when you are working the muscle, you want to make sure you're actually working the muscle. So what do I mean by this? Well, I had a client, we were working chest, we're doing incline barbell press. Oh, he's hammering out, going ham, gets to that last set, boom, puts the weight back, and you're like, dang, Alec, that was I'll go workout, man. Feeling it. And my triceps and my shoulders, they're on fire. I was like, your triceps and shoulders are on fire for incline bench press. He's like, yeah. I was like, all right, we gotta lower the weight. He's like, what? No, that weight felt pretty good. I was like, well, where did it feel good? He's like, well, yeah, like the shoulders and stuff. I was like, dude, we're trying to train chest, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, are you feeling it in your chest? He's like, oh, no, that's weird. Why is that? I was like, well, the reason why is because your chest muscle is not feeling, your brain does not feel confident to move the weight primarily with your chest. Therefore, it is subconsciously tapping into your shoulders and your triceps to move the weight. So we have to decrease the weight so that you can have a better mind muscle connection to your chest in order for your chest to take over the majority of the movement there. He's like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Let's do that. So we did that. We lowered the weight. He went slower with the movement and he really felt the contraction in the chest. And then guess what? His chest started to get results because he was feeling it in his chest. So if you are going to do the thing where I'm saying like the lateral raises and the incline press and the wide grip lat pull downs, like you want to make sure you're feeling it, not just in the muscle that you're trying to work, but also in the location of the muscle that you're trying to work. So for the incline chest press, it's like you should be feeling it like up here, should be feeling it in the center. When you're doing the lateral raises, you should be feeling it right here in the lateral delt. And then for the wide grip lat pull downs, you want to feel it in your lats. Like you're feeling it in your biceps. It's not a bicep workout. It's a back workout. You got to feel it in your back. For the chest, it's not a tricep workout. Like those muscles are going to feel it secondarily, but the primary soreness and the flexion has to be in the muscles that you want to target. Doesn't matter if you're doing any of this stuff. If you're not feeling it in the muscle, in this location that you are trying to work, it's not going to work it. All right, cool. So we talked about targeting the muscle, which is hitting the exact muscle that you want to work, feeling it in the location of the muscle that you want to work. And we also understand realistically, you can only build 1 to 2 pounds of muscle every month. The 2 pounds, that's the newbie gains right there. So now we're going to talk about frequency, because frequency is a big thing. I've had people come up, they're like, yo, Alec, you got some really good calf genetics, man. But I also want to know, what do you do for your workouts? And then I respond to the question. I was like, all right, well, what do you do for your workouts for calves? They're like, oh yeah, I just do leg press machine for the calves. I was like, all right, well, how frequently do you hit the calves? They're like, well, I'm hitting them today. I was like, all right, did you hit them at any other time this week? They're like, no, I worked them once last week. I was like, okay, what about the week before that? They're like, I didn't even get into the gym the week before that, so I didn't train them then. I was like, okay, and what about the week before that? They're like, oh yeah, I did, but it was kind of like half-assed workout, so like honestly, it wasn't even, like I don't even count it because didn't really get to hit the calves as much as I wanted. I was like, okay, so you could confidently say that you trained calves twice so far this month. Oh, damn, yeah, twice this month. I was like, okay. I was like, so I'm training calves today, and this is going to be my second time this week. And then I trained them twice last week, and then I trained them twice the week before that, and I trained them twice the week before that. And then the person started to realize, they're like, oh. And I was like, yeah, my 1 week's worth of calves is your entire month's worth of calves, at least for this month. So every week that goes by, like in theory, if you only train calves twice a month, every week I'm getting a month further and further and further ahead of you in your progress. So for this person, they just simply were not training them frequently enough. And when it comes to building muscle, the big thing is going to be like the frequency and intensity there. So for frequency, studies have been showing now that doing 15 working sets per muscle group that you want to grow per week is enough of a stimulus to actually have those muscles respond by growing. If you do more than that, like it might just be diminishing returns. You may actually even be working the muscles too much. You strain them, you break down too many muscle fibers, body's not able to recuperate and repair those muscles. So you can imagine like a chart here, like if this is your baseline and then you go to the gym and you train the muscle, and you take your rest. In theory, it should be above where that initial baseline was. But if you go to the gym and it's a crazy workout, you just are ripping and tearing muscle left and right, then by the time it gets done recovering, sometimes it can actually be below the baseline. What? And it's like, yeah, because the amount of time that the body's going to spend recovering, like it's like 42 to about like 78 hours. You know, that's just like a general range. But like after a certain point, your body's going to stop trying to recover that muscle from the point that you had trained it. So you want to like train it enough to break down the muscle fibers and really stimulate the nervous system to respond to being like, hey, we got to grow this muscle. But you don't want to do it so much that you get into this major deficit and your body is not able to recuperate past that point. So like I was saying, studies have shown that 15 sets per week is a good range there. And a way that you can do this, at least this is what I've been doing recently, is I'll do 3 exercises for a muscle group. And now that'll be the workout there. So going to chest, I did incline dumbbell press, incline dumbbell flies, and then incline barbell press. And I did 5 sets per exercise. And 5 times 3, 15, boom. I was able to hit the 15 sets there and also just like totally destroyed my chest, but I'm also giving it enough time to recuperate past that point of baseline, resulting in more muscle growth. Now, how many reps do you need to do per set? Well, it's kind of a range. Like as long as it's between like 6 or 20 reps per set, you should be good. Studies have shown like you can even get all the way up to 30 reps and the body can still respond by growing more muscle. But personally, anything past 20, it's like that's a lot of reps. Like we're not trying to go for like endurance here. We just want to get to the point of failure and then rest for that set. So if you hit failure within this range, you're good. You get to 6 reps and you're like, I can't do another rep, and you stop, perfectly fine. If you get to 20 and you're like, man, I can't do 21, that's fine. The point is you really want to get to failure per set, because getting to failure is going to provide the right amount of intensity. Now that's that third thing that I've seen a lot of people slack on. They'll be doing a workout, they get to like 12 reps and they stop, or they get to like 8 reps, 10 reps and they stop. It's like, why'd you stop? They're like, well, I hit 10 reps. And it's like, do you think you could do more? They're like, oh yeah, do more. They're like, no. It's the workout thing I saw online said 8 to 10 reps, so I hit 10 reps. And it's like, no, it's like 8 to 10. Like you want to hit your failure point at 8 to 10. It's like, oh, so how do we know if we're hitting the right intensity? Well, this is what I refer to as the 4 levers. These are different variables, different levers that you can pull to provide enough intensity, enough of a stimulus to the muscle so that the body responds by growing more muscle. And the levers that I'm going to be referring to are the amount of reps, the amount of rest, the speed, and the weight. So reps and weight tend to be the most popular. I would say, if anything, weight is very popular. But going to the example earlier about the gentleman that was like, oh no, the workout on the website that I found on Google said 8 to 10 reps. So I hit 10 reps. That means I'm good to go. And it's like, no, but the reps have to be to failure. So you get to 10 and you're like, I can't do another rep after 10. Or you get to 10 and you're like, maybe I could do 1, maybe I could do 2 more reps, but I don't feel comfortable doing that because I don't want to hurt myself. That's perfectly fine. The point is to get to failure. So at the 6 to 20 rep range, if you get to 12 and you can't do 13, perfect. If you get to 6 and you can't go to 7, perfect. If you get to 11 and you can't do a 12, perfectly fine. The point is to get to failure per set. And when it comes to the amount of weight, the general rule of thumb that I like to do is when I hit 20 reps fairly consistently, like let's say like 3 sets, then I feel comfortable and confident enough to safely increase the weight. Because a lot of people, they just think more weight, gotta move more weight. And if we're talking about 4 different variables, 4 different levers that you can pull in order to stimulate the muscle grow, like there's a lot of other options you can do instead of just lifting a lot of weight. Because the thing that I like to point out to people is like, haven't you ever seen someone in the gym lift and they kind of surprise you with how strong they are? Now, the reason why they surprise you is because visually they don't look like they are strong. However, they are strong. So that means there's not a direct correlation between the amount of weight you can lift and the visual aesthetics of being very physically fit. As you get more fit, you will get stronger, but it is possible to get stronger without looking visually more fit. So I just like to point that out, because this is not the only variable. This is not the only thing to be focused on is the weight. Now, if you're consistently hitting 20 reps and you feel like you could do more, then it's like, yeah, increase the weight. But moving more weight does not mean building more muscle. Just like to establish that. So we talked about the reps, you got to hit failure, the amount of weight. When you hit 20 reps consistently for a couple sets, you can increase the weight. Another thing is the rest. So more studies have been coming out showing that around 2 minutes of rest in between sets, still enough time so that the body's not totally cooled down before each set, but it's also enough time so that the muscles can recuperate enough where you can go back into the workout and do it with enough intensity where you can really extract the most amount of work with that muscle. So once you hit failure, just look at your watch, boom, 2 minutes. After 2 minutes is up, get right back into the next set. And when you are performing the exercises, the thing I'm about to share with you right now is hands down probably the best thing that is going to improve your gains in the gym. And I'm prefacing it by emphasizing this because I'm telling you, if you do this alone and you change nothing else, you are going to see some great visual changes in the gym. What am I talking about? Is the speed. The speed in which you move the weight. If you move the weight more slowly, you're increasing the time under tension, which is the amount of time during that given set where the muscle is contracting and flexing and moving, or you're not contracting, you're relaxing the muscle, but you're moving it eccentrically. So concentric is contracting, eccentric is when you are essentially like relaxing the muscle. But if you maintain the flex and the squeeze and that pump during that time, so let's say with the bench, it's like 3 to 4 seconds up, 3 to 4 seconds down, and you're holding the squeeze and the contraction the entire time, it drastically increases the intensity of the workout. You won't be able to do a lot of reps. You won't be able to do a lot of weight. However, you can still reap massive amounts of benefits and see drastic improvements by simply moving the weight more slow. So 3 to 4 seconds, that's like the golden range right there. Because when people go really fast, they're building momentum. They're not actually like moving the weight as much. But not only that, like you can imagine like someone's trying to like swing a dumbbell. There's all these tiny movements that the body does to cheat to move the weight. So like this right here starts to build that momentum so that when you go to actually curl the weight, it's not actually as heavy. And then jerking it back, like doing that, fast, like you don't see it as much, but you're lifting way less weight than is actually like on label due to the amount of momentum that's being built up. But you can't cheat it if you're going 3 to 4 seconds up, 3 to 4 seconds down. It has to be the muscle that is working. And the thing that's pretty cool as well, the visual trick that I like to do when I'm flexing and squeezing the muscle, there's, I think it was at Stanford, they were researching to see how come certain people can grow more muscle in certain areas than other areas. I don't know about you, but maybe you feel like one muscle can grow more easily when you train it than a different muscle. And they were trying to figure out like, why is that? And they found that it's because of that mind muscle connection. People that were able to like squeeze and flex a muscle to the point where it felt like it was almost like cramping up were able to build significantly more muscle in that area than they could in other areas where if they flex it, they couldn't feel that kind of like cramping sensation. And I'm not saying to lift to the point where you feel like your muscles are cramping, but as you are squeezing and flexing, if you can keep that image in mind, like you are moving the weight and it's like you're really squeezing that whole time, you are working all those individual muscle fibers and the body has to respond by growing more of that muscle. By moving it more slowly, you are able to more adequately get like that deeper flex going on. So with the 4 levers, just to repeat, the amount of reps, you got to get to the point where you're like, I can't do another rep. And once you do that, you're going to rest for 2 minutes. And remember, while you are moving the weight, it should take like 3 to 4 seconds to bring it up, 3 to 4 seconds to bring it down. When it comes to the amount of weight, if you can hit like 20 reps for like 3 sets in a row, go for it, increase the weight. But you'd be surprised. Like if you're doing the 3 exercises at 5 sets, I've had it where I started at 20 reps and then the second set was like 18, third set was like 12, fourth set got to like 8, fifth set was like 6. Like if you're following this, it's going to be pretty intense. And again, it's not about the amount of weight, it's about the amount that you are feeling. How much are you feeling it in the muscle that you are working? So brief overview before I start getting into like the diet portion of this. When you are targeting a muscle, you want to make sure you are actually training the muscle that you want to work. You want to feel it in that muscle, and you want to feel it in the location of the muscle that you are trying to train as well. You can expect about 1 to 2 pounds of muscle growth per month. So if you're gaining 10, 15 pounds, most likely it's not 10, 15 pounds of muscle. It can be like 9 or 14 pounds of fat. So you don't want to do that. Now, the amount of times that you should be working out, you want to aim for about 15 sets per muscle group per week. You could do 3 exercises, 5 sets per exercise, and just devote an entire day to that specific muscle. For the amount of reps, you want to aim for 16 to 20 reps. However, it's not just about hitting a number. We want to make sure the intensity is there as well. So when it comes to the intensity, when you stop during a given set, it should be because you've gotten to the point of failure, which means you can't do another rep for that set. And then when you do get to failure, rest for 2 minutes, get back into it, but make sure to move the weight every rep, around 3 to 4 seconds contracting, 3 to 4 seconds relaxing. And I would say if you get to 20 reps and you're following this to a T and you get to the 20 reps, like it's like 2 or 3 sets in, feel free to increase the weight. But if you're doing all this stuff, it's going to be very difficult once you find a weight that works. So now we need to talk about repairing and refueling the body. To keep it simple, literally the 2 things you need to focus on is just the amount of calories and the amount of protein. I refer to this as like the guardrails framework for one's diet, where it's literally just calories and protein. Like as long as you are like within this range, you can think of it like guardrails on a road, you will get to your destination. So calories, it's either you just want to hit the calories or stay slightly above or below it. If you're trying to gain weight, you can go slightly above the calories. If you're trying to lose weight, you want to be below the calories, but it's a whole different number that we're going to calculate for losing fat. In this video, we're just focusing on building muscle. So in this example, you want to make sure you are at or above the calories. And for protein, you want to make sure you're at the protein. No matter what, you got to hit the protein. For everyone, I always say hit the protein. So how do you calculate the calories? Well, you could do the whole thing where you're talking about the basal metabolic rate and the total daily energy expenditure. It's a lot of math. But a really cool trick that I found that I've been implementing and I've been having my clients implement as well is you just take your current body weight in pounds, and if you multiply it by 13, that'll bring you to like a maintenance level of calories. If you multiply it by 15, that'll definitely get you in a calorie surplus where you're more likely to put on weight. So what I would do is I'd recommend start with your body weight in pounds and multiplying it by 13. If you struggle with like eating enough food to actually put on weight, that'll be a great place to start. Because if you're below that and you get to that point, you're going to put on weight no matter what. If you are very like fluctuating with the amount of calories you eat, and if you just stick with that, like you'll put on some good weight. But if you really are looking to just like put on mass and you're okay with putting on like a little bit of fat and whatnot, you can jump straight to 15. Body weight in pounds times 15. Still, I feel like 13 is a good place to start at. And then you could go from 13 to 14 to 15. And anything past 15, it's just going to, in my opinion, it's just going to be too much weight being put on too soon. You're going to get more into that fat mass territory there. And then for protein, this is a fun one because what it'll be, so this is actually a C, kind of looks like an L, but so it'll be your centimeters of your height multiplied by 1.2. So there was a study that was done that was looking at, I don't even know what the exact like outcome of the study was trying to look at, but they were examining people who were obese, like 450 plus pounds of weight. And they're creating their diets and things like that. And then when it got to the protein, they were like, pulled one of the scientists aside. They're like, yo, Rodney, you know how like we're supposed to do body weight and convert and like that would be the amount of grams of protein people should eat? They're like, yeah. They're like, well, this person's 450 pounds. I don't think they should be eating 450 grams of protein, right? And they're like, oh, you make a good point. That is a little odd, especially since this person is like not even 6 feet tall. And they're like, well, what should we do? They're like, well, we'll just take their height in centimeters. We'll do that for the amount of grams of protein. And I remember when I read that in the study, I was like, that is genius. Because if someone is really tall and underweight, they'll still get the amount of protein that they need. And if someone is fairly short, very overweight, they don't need to eat more protein than is necessary. So when you do your height in centimeters and then you multiply it by 1.2, the 1.2 is mainly just compensating for any periods of time where there's going to be like massive growth spikes with building muscle. Because if you are at this point where you're going to be putting on like 2 pounds of muscle every month, like your body's going to be wanting a lot of protein for that. And if this whole thing is geared towards building the most amount of muscle as possible, then it's like, why not provide the muscle with as much material that it needs as possible, you know? So 1.2 times your height in centimeters. It'll also help to compensate for any mislabeling on nutrition labels. Apparently, a lot of labels can be inaccurate for the amount of protein by up to 20%. Now, it's not, it could be 20% more or 20% less. It's like, no, it could be up to 20% less than what's actually written on the label. So 1.2 kind of compensates for that. Because if you needed to eat 150 grams of protein, let's say, and you're hitting 150 grams every day, but the labels are consistently below by 20%, could be even more, then you actually are not hitting the 150. Who knows? You might even be eating just 100 grams of protein every day, stacked up over multiple days. After 2 days, you've missed out on 100 grams of protein. So the 1.2 helps compensate for that. I've never, ever ran into an issue of having too much protein. I've always ran into issues by not having enough protein. So do with it what you want. This is just what I do. And a little hack that I like to do when it comes to the protein. So most like protein powders will be like 25 grams per scoop. You can simply just do 2 scoops every time you have a protein shake. So you do 2 scoops in the morning, that's 50 grams. And then you do 2 scoops after a workout, that's 100 grams. Now, sure, get it, from protein, like rich meats and things like that as well. Do you have to do the whole foods diet type of thing? I don't think so. Doing the protein powders is actually the most affordable and efficient way of getting more protein in. I like to aim for a protein brand where it's about like $1 to $1.25 per 25 grams of protein. You can get like a 1 pound packet of like ground beef. It might be like $6. And a pound of any type of ground meat, for the most part, is going to be about 80 to about 100 grams of protein. So $6 for 100 grams protein, not too bad. But most protein powder brands that I buy, it'll be about like $1 to $1.25 per 25 grams protein. So just for like simple math, let's say it's $1. I do 2 scoops in the morning. That's $2. I do 2 scoops after a workout. That's another $2. So I spent $4 to get in 100 grams of protein, and I'm ingesting it in a way that that is significantly more bioavailable than the meat, because the meat, you gotta chew it. The body has to break it down into a simple amino acids to then be absorbed into the bloodstream. With protein powder, it's just whey protein. It's very easy for the body to metabolize that and then have it be released into the bloodstream. So for $4, I'm getting 100 grams of protein. My body's absorbing it more easily. I'm ingesting it more easily. But then for $6, you got to go to the grocery store. You got to buy the meat. You got to put the meat in the fridge. When you're ready to eat it, you got to take it out. You got to cook it. You got to season it. And of course, you're not just going to eat a pound of ground meat by itself. You got to get some other foods with it. You got to cook that as well. You got to put that on a plate. And then when you put it on the plate and you get finished eating, you got to then take the plate and the utensils. You got to put them in the sink. You got to wash them in the sink, or you put them in the dishwasher. You wash that and you got to put the dishes away. And then you got to rinse and repeat, and you got to buy more of the food. It's like, that's a lot of freaking steps. Now, I'm not saying don't do that, but I just like further try to emphasize, like, you can get your protein goal fairly easily if you are doing the protein powders, and do more protein powders. Like, that's perfectly fine. In the beginning of my fitness journey, I was like actually going through my notes, and I was like 3 scoops. I was doing 3 scoops, and I was like, well, 3 scoops in the morning, 75 grams. And I did 3 scoops after a workout, 125 grams of protein just from protein powder. And I was shedding fat like crazy, put on a good amount of muscle size as well. And I was also burning through protein powder like crazy. But again, if you're trying to get that from meat alone, it can get expensive, and it is more expensive than doing it the protein powder route. So that is my simple, just like framework for like mastering muscle mass gaining. Do with it as you please. With great power comes great responsibility. And I already know there's going to be a lot of fitness people that are going to be hating me for this, because I'm literally just kind of like revealing the tricks of the trade. So it really is as simple as that. If you have questions, if you would like workouts or things like that like implement all of this stuff together, hit me up. Make sure to subscribe. I got more videos coming out soon. And I want to know in the comments, what was the biggest takeaway? Like, what's the one thing from this that you are going to apply to your routine in order to build more muscle mass? So thank you guys for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Go out, go sweat, drink protein shakes. Peace.